Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we got a bit of a longer question about the Ahsoka series and how I felt about it, or the critiques I have given it. And so what I'm going to do is kind of break this one up into pieces. I'm mainly going to be playing devil's advocate here as well, though I'm really still giving my opinion most of the time, I think. Anyway, it comes to us from the animation connoisseur who said, "Hey Thor, I know that it's probably a bit too late for me to bring this up now, considering how the Ahsoka series is no longer the hot topic with the Star Wars fandom at the moment. But as someone who enjoyed the show, I wanted to give my 2 cents about some of the criticisms people made against it that I strongly disagree with, and in a sense, debunk them by presenting my own counter-arguments. Keep in mind, though, that these are just my opinions, and if you don't agree with me, that's completely fine. I'd just like you to hear me out. But moving on, what I actually wish to say, the 2 complaints about the series I wish to address have to do with both Thrawn's writing portrayal and Sabine's decision to find Ezra. Okay, so before we really dive into it here, I just want to give kind of my overall general thoughts of the Ahsoka series, because a lot of people are under the impression that I just absolutely hated it, and that's not true. I thought it was average, or maybe okay at best. My biggest issue with it is that I really, really wanted it to be good. I felt like it needed to be good because, as I've said before, this was the great trial for Dave Filoni. This was, can the Padawan become the master? Can the Padawan of George Lucas, who kind of was his right-hand man on Clone Wars, can he now break into live action and give us something truly special? And so going into the series, I really wanted it to be good, and I was actually kind of generous to it at the start for my first couple of reviews, so much so that I had a lot of people calling me a shill, that, oh, you're just like the show because you're a Dave Filoni guy. And I am kind of a Dave Filoni guy. I do like him. I still like him, even though he hasn't or didn't deliver with the Ahsoka series necessarily. I don't hate him. A lot of people have really turned against him. That's fine. I can kind of understand that. Anyway, to get to the point, I really wanted the Ahsoka series to be good so that Dave Filoni could be the future of Star Wars and we could feel good about that. It wasn't. And like I said, at first I was kind of positive towards it. I had a lot of people saying, oh, again, you're being way too kind to it. And then by the end, about at the midway point with episodes 6, 7, and 8, when Thrawn shows up, that's when I kind of started to turn on the show and wasn't happy with it and was kind of being very critical of it. And that, of course, is when everybody started to call me a hater. So it was a matter of I went from being a Disney shill for the first few episodes to just being a hater who does all this to make money off people's hate for Star Wars and all that. But anyway, let's carry on with the comment here. I'll start off with Sabine. I've heard many people say that by choosing to go along with Shin, Balin, and the Night Sisters to find Thrawn, she effectively doomed the entire galaxy by going along with them to find Thrawn, but I personally strongly disagree with this notion. If anything, I think that the Night Sisters would have found Thrawn with or without the map, as they can literally peer into the far reaches of the galaxy to locate someone. So even if Sabine and Ahsoka had done nothing, Thrawn still would have escaped anyway. Okay, so the problem with that is you then make the map completely irrelevant to the point where why were they even looking for the map in the first place if the Night Sisters could, or if Morgan Elsbeth, because the other Night Sisters were in the other part of the galaxy and we don't have any in this part, they're all pretty much gone at this point in time. But anyway, if Morgan can just find Thrawn without the map, why is she looking for the map in the first place? The first several episodes are about that. So if we have it where Sabine destroys the map and is killed or whatever happens to her after that, and then Morgan is like, oh, no big deal. I can just use my Night Sister powers and we'll go find Thrawn anyway. Again, you've kind of defeated the purpose of the whole beginning of the show. Furthermore, I think it's a matter of the map is needed for a precise location for traveling across the literal universe at this point. We're hopping to another galaxy. And so I don't think it's a matter of they can just use their Night Sister magic to locate Thrawn and go and find him. They need the map to get that precise location. Otherwise, there's really no context to it. It'd be like if I had the power to see anybody on the planet and their surroundings. It really isn't going to do me a ton of good to see their surroundings unless there are obviously clues and hints as to exactly where they are and how to get there. I mean, I know there are some people, I've seen them on YouTube, who can take one image and find it anywhere on Earth. So if I can only just see their location, it doesn't really do me any good unless I know precisely where it is and precisely how to get there. Alright, anyway, let's move on now and get back to the comment where they said, I'd argue it was better for Sabine to take that risk and to try and find Ezra, so that the New Republic can actually stand a chance against Thrawn, instead of doing absolutely nothing, because when he returns, they'll need all the help they can get. And the funny thing is, I really don't have a problem with Sabine giving the map to Balin. I think that's exactly what she should have done, or not should have done, but that's exactly what the character should have done. That makes sense for Sabine. She obviously shouldn't have done that. I disagree with you there that her best hope is to go and find Thrawn and stop him that way. Anyway, that isn't really the issue here, because I like the idea that here is this Jedi in training, quote unquote, who makes the selfish decision to go and find the person she cares about instead of picking the galaxy and potentially destroying this map and stopping them, which is the impression she is under. She doesn't know that the Night Sisters would, as you suggest, maybe be able to find Thrawn anyway. But my issue isn't that she does it. My issue is that there's no real repercussion with Ezra, who did it or sacrificed himself to kind of take Thrawn off the board in the first place, right? This was his big sacrifice to stop Thrawn and to save Lothal. And now Sabine has kind of undone all that by potentially allowing Thrawn to come back and to, well, maybe hurt his friends or take over Lothal again or whatever he might do, the whole galaxy this time. And so what I'm upset about is we kind of skip over this conversation, which would inevitably happen between Ezra and Sabine, where Ezra keeps asking, like, how did you find me? How did you find me? And eventually she's got to say, well, I gave this map to the bad guys and they're now going to bring Thrawn back. How do you feel about that? That's what I'm upset about, not that Sabine actually made the decision. I think that is the decision Sabine would have made, which is an interesting decision, too. It's interesting for the story. It works for the story. That's not the issue. Okay, back to the comment, and they say, moving on to Thrawn, I hear a lot of people complain about how both he and his plan to escape parody were written and presented, but I'm a diehard Thrawn fan. He's one of my top 5 favorite Star Wars characters, and I personally thought both felt very in character for him. I know you in the past have said that the way he won wasn't very clever, by just running out the clock, but from my point of view, it seemed like a very smart thing to do, and just another classic Thrawn move like we saw in Rebels, surveying the enemy and granting them small victories, so when the time is right, he can truly destroy them. And first of all, Thrawn is one of my favorite characters too. I don't know that he's top 5 or top 10, but he's way up there. And so I really wanted to see him handled well. I wanted to see him become the main threat of this time period, of the Mandoverse time period, as I tend to call it. And so one of my main problems with his strategy, the run out the clock and barely escape strategy, is that I don't know that this is the best way to introduce the character to people who don't know the first thing about him, which is a large portion of the audience. Now, sure, a lot of Star Wars fans have heard of Thrawn. They've probably never read the books, never seen Rebels. And then you have people who are more casual fans who have never heard of Thrawn at all, who just know this is some blue Imperial Admiral guy, and soon enough are probably going to see that he is going to, as I said, be the main antagonist of this time period. And so I think you want to give him a very definitive win here. I think you want to show his brilliance and that maybe the odds were stacked against him, that maybe something was going on in this galaxy where he was fighting for survival with his limited resources and barely hanging on, but since he's so brilliant, he managed to, and then he gets the definitive win over Ezra and Sabine and Ahsoka, and it's not so much that he just barely escapes as much as they just didn't really have a chance against him, which I know maybe is a bit of a strange way to do a story called Ahsoka. You assume the protagonist is going to just do well and get the win, and you do also have to consider she is a new character for some people watching this. But if this is really going to be where the Imperial Remnant finally kind of unveils themselves, or the beginning of the story with Thrawn now taking the helm when he gets back, I really do think you want to show him being a more competent character, that he has faced some pretty difficult odds, and it's implied he has. It looks like his ship is beat up and his troopers are all patched up. I'm not saying they don't do it at all, but the fact that he does have, I would say, all the advantages and he just barely escapes the heroes didn't feel like the best way to bring in this character. Alright, they then go on to say he is saving his resources, manpower, and mind for this time when he really needs it, so he can hit the New Republic with everything he's got. If he expends too much of that in taking down Sabine, Ahsoka, and Ezra, he might not have enough left when the time for the Empire Strikes Back comes. Plus, it's also not like he can just draw from the seemingly infinite resources of the Empire's resources anymore, given that they are now just warring factions at this point. And again, really trying to play devil's advocate here, not anything personal. I'm not trying to attack you. You can like what you like, I like what I like, and that is fine. I love the discussion around it because I know it's all in good fun. But anyway, I think one of the problems here is we know, actually, if we look at the Disney canon, if we look at the sequels, We know the Empire has to have some pretty decent resources at this time. Now, maybe they don't agree. They are kind of separate war bands, as you suggest. But they are currently building Star Killer Base. They're also currently building a fleet of Death Star destroyers out at Exegol. But anyway, not really worrying about that. I don't know that Thrawn didn't have just all the resource advantages in the Ahsoka series in his escape. He literally has a Star Destroyer. He literally has TIE Fighters. He has Troopers. And at one point, you're talking about him not wasting resources. He sends like a squad of stormtroopers and they just get mowed down, and there was really no reason to send them out in the first place. And so, with him having all of that, it feels strange that he has to try to run away from three individuals with basically no resources except for the help of crab people. I get it that they are all Jedi in a manner of speaking. You have Ahsoka, who was once a Jedi and still basically is a Jedi. You have Ezra, who was a Jedi Padawan. We also have Sabine, who is training to be a Jedi and unlocks her powers by the end. But again, the problem is we have Thrawn, we have this brilliant mind, and he has all of these resources. Whether he wants to do or should use them or not, we can debate, yeah. But he's brilliant, he has the resources, he has a Star Destroyer, he has all these things, and three Jedi are trying to stop him. And they seem to have no issue at all with putting him on the back foot and having to make him just, again, run out the clock to barely escape. And now we're supposed to believe he's going to go back and just lead the remnants of the Empire into win after win and put the New Republic on the back foot. I don't know, it just doesn't feel like the way you should go about selling this character. I would have preferred if there was some other threat that we knew about, because again, maybe there was some other threat in this other galaxy that has been draining his resources. It does seem to be the case, but we saw or heard none of that, so we're left to assume he's just been kind of hanging out here for the last 10 years and nothing's really been bothering him, and now a couple of Jedi show up and he can't handle that and he just has to run away. Alright, and on to the final part of the comment now, where they said, the Ahsoka series might not have been a perfect show, but I honestly think it's much better than people gave it credit for, and did a great job of blending my favorite things in Star Wars, Clone Wars, Rebels, the OT, without relying on them solely for nostalgia, as well as maintaining and uplifting Anakin's status as the Chosen One. I really think it's time people start giving both this series and Dave Filoni their dues again, but again, that's just my opinion. And I will agree with you that it does a pretty dang good job of blending things like Clone Wars, Rebels, and the OT together and making something that feels like a continuation of all of that to a degree. Though at the same time, I don't think it does a good enough job of bringing the person in there who maybe hasn't seen any of that, or hasn't seen Rebels and Clone Wars, and maybe has seen the OT, or maybe someone who hasn't seen any Star Wars at all, and getting them to like these characters, understand these characters and their motivations and what the heck is going on. I think if you step back from those things and you try to look at this show as just a generic sci-fi show that someone might be watching for the first time, or first Star Wars thing like I was saying, I don't know that it's very good and interesting and keeps you hooked and keeps you caring and watching more. I think it actually relies rather heavily on all those things you mentioned, maybe a little bit too heavily for the average viewer. Though I don't know that I would call it nostalgia bait, as some people call, especially with that 5th episode where Anakin comes back, and I actually defended that episode quite a bit when it first aired. I had a lot of people saying, again, I was being a shill because, oh, you just were happy to see Anakin back, and yeah, it was cool. It's cool to see Anakin, played by Hayden again, and interacting with a live-action Ahsoka, and calling her Snips, and she's calling him Sky Guy. It's cool, sure, I liked it. And it made sense for the character of Ahsoka. The titular character of the story had a very close relationship. They were master and apprentice with Anakin, so it made sense that this would be a point of contention for her, having to deal with what happened to Anakin, him becoming Darth Vader and all of these things. It made sense. It was fine. But anyway, I was okay with that. I just think that the show could have overall done a better job of explaining to the average viewer, the first-time viewer, what the heck is going on with all these characters and giving them more of a reason to care. But anyway, I think that is going to be all I got for you this time. I want to thank you for the question. Hopefully you don't take anything I said here personally. It's all a fun debate of sorts, and I respect your opinion, absolutely. You can love the show as much as you want. I didn't hate it, as I said. I thought it was okay. I just wish it had been much, much better, because I wanted to see Dave Filoni really succeed, and I don't feel like he did. But either way, now it is everybody else's turn to take to the comments below and tell us what you think. Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video, or a long-form question like this, where we can sort of have a debate about something. You just start your comment off of, hey Thor, yeah, write your question up. I try to answer it in a future video. But whatever the case may be, leave those questions or comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.